Yeah, this is Radio TV Phono Nut, and I realize it's been quite a while since I've made a video, but there's been a lot going on in my life. The first delay was, you can't see it that well, but rebuilding that privacy fence out there, and to save money, we recycled as much of the old material as we could, and that meant hammering nails and removing screws from old fence boards. And the second thing that's got me off track was a week ago this morning, my sister had a massive stroke and passed away 2 days later, so that kind of threw us for a loop over here. And it's a hard lesson for all of us that, none of us know from 1 minute to the next what's going to take place in our lives, either directly with us or with those people that we're close to. My sister had beaten breast cancer, stage 4 breast cancer, that she was told she wouldn't survive, and from what I hear, a couple of weeks ago, she got a good report from the doctor. Well, Sunday night, early Monday morning, we'll say, around 1 or 2 a.m., she was still playing around on Facebook, and she told her husband that her shoulder was hurting and she was going to take a pain pill and go to bed. Well, about 4 o'clock is when the stroke hit, and that was pretty much it. She never recovered from it. But anyway, what we have today is an old Philco cathedral radio from probably around 1933 or so. This is part of a pile of stuff that I was asked to repair, and I'm finally getting around to this one. Now, this radio supposedly was a victim of a fire, and it looks like it. You can see the cabinets in kind of rough shape, and we have veneer that's all buckled, and the chassis looks like it's had a little water exposure. But we're going to do everything we can to try to get this thing working again. But yeah, I think the last video from me is when I repaired the Samsung flat screen TV that, by the way, is residing in my living room. I thought about selling it, but as crazy as people are nowadays, I'd be just my luck. I'd put it up for sale, and then somebody buy it, and in 3 weeks or a month or 6 months later, when the TV quit working or their brat kid hit the screen with something, and they'd bring it back over here throwing a fit about it. And let's face it, I'd be doing good to get $100 for the set, given what new TVs cost today. So I just decided, well, we could use a bigger TV in the living room, and this one basically didn't cost me anything, so I'll put it in the living room and use it until it dies. And in that video, we also repaired this little set, the NTE 712 audio IC decided to take a dump on us, and I'm happy to report this set's still working. Okay, enough rambling on about past videos and life in general. Let's tear into the Philco and see if I can beat it back into submission. Okay, here's the chassis, and as you can see, it's all blacked up from the fire that it was in. Let's look under it and see what we got. Here's the underside, about what I'd expect. We have some of the old Philco Bakelite block capacitors that need to be rebuilt. But before I dive too deep into this, I want to check the continuity of all of the coils. Philcos from this era had a problem with coils opening up. The little fine windings would just corrode, and the wire would break. And that took place in sets that were kept in a more proper environment. since this thing went through a fire, I want to especially make sure all that's good, because if any of those coils are open, then that might mean that this radio is not worth repairing. And I wouldn't want to do all the other work to this just to discover that we have an open coil somewhere. Actually, I think this is a fairly common radio, or at least they show up pretty often on eBay. So, you know, given the damage that this one has sustained, if I find too much wrong with the chassis, the owner of this set might be better off just buying one in better shape off of eBay or whatever, and just using this one for parts, but we're not going to give up on it yet. Okay, the first test is the power transformer. I've got 120 volts AC applied. I'm checking the high voltage winding, reading about 714 volts, give or take. And when I test from each side of the winding to ground, I get about half voltage, so the center tap is okay. And we're obviously getting 6.3 volts, or in this case, this might be a 2.5 volt filament set. I hadn't even really checked, but obviously we're getting filament voltage because I see the other tubes and the pilot lamp illuminated. Now let's see if we have 5 volts on our rectifier tube. And we're getting about 4.5 volts there. We probably should get about 5 volts. Actually unloaded, it should probably be more than that, so that may be of concern. And on the other filaments, we're getting about 6.9 volts. That's good, so obviously this is a 6 volt set. And back on the rectifier, we're up to 5.7 volts. That's good. I think the problem was just dirty tube socket contacts, so we're off to a good start. The power transformer seems to be okay. We're not drawing excessive current, nothing's getting hot at all, so that's good. Now let's move on to these coils here. Well, as you saw, the power transformer test okay, but unfortunately that's where the good news ends. I just printed up the service information on this particular radio, and this first coil is our antenna coil, and then we have our oscillator coil, and then we have our IF transformer, for lack of a better term. This set really doesn't have an IF stage, but anyway, on our antenna coil we have an open primary winding. On our oscillator coil, we actually have 2 windings open, the ones I have highlighted. And then on this little IF transformer deal here, the primary winding is open, as well as the tap on the secondary side. So that's 3 strikes against it right there. Now, could this set be fixed? Well, of course it could. Just about anything could be fixed if you're willing to spend the time and money to do it. Is it worth fixing, in my professional opinion? No. And the reason being is because this set is in such bad shape, both cosmetically and electronically. Like I said previously, this set's been through a fire. Yes, I could probably search and find another radio with the good parts, and then it'd be just my luck that whatever radio I bought would have a bad coil or transformer. But by the time you invested money in an organ donor set to get the needed parts, and by the time you fix this set up to make it look presentable, you could have gone on eBay or to the flea market or wherever and bought a much better candidate for restoration that wouldn't cost as much to restore and would likely have all the major organs still intact. And like I think I previously stated, this is a fairly common radio, except in Mississippi. You know, nothing's common here except empty beer bottles. But anyway, if the owner really wants to pursue this, then you know, I'll do what I can to help, but in my professional judgment, I really think the owner would be better off just to scrap this one for parts and search out a better example. Okay, we're all back together, and as much as I'd love to save every radio, record player, and TV that comes across this workbench, there are just some cases where that's not feasible, and unfortunately this is one of those cases. So unless the owner has a very high sentimental attachment to this set, I'm going to recommend that he not have it repaired. This one would be better suited as a parts donor for when the owner finds a set that's in overall better shape. Then maybe this old one here can provide some parts to fix another set. You know, the good side is we have a set of tubes, we have a good power transformer, the speaker appears to be usable. Yes, I've already plugged it in and got static out of the speaker, but with the coils and transformers and the RF and IF stages open, it's not going to play. But I'm sorry we couldn't save this one, but that's just the way it is sometimes. Hopefully in the next video we'll be able to save something. Okay, there you go. Thank you, and more to come later.